Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Stephen and Oliver Show. We're really getting to the groove of this now, aren't we? Lots of exciting stuff under development. We've been having a planning session now, and we're looking at guests and so forth in the not too distant future. No spoilers yet, because we haven't invited them, but we know the people are on the list, so you'll be hearing from us soon. Anyway, we've got a long-standing idea that we've been talking about. This one's sort of been in the log for a little while now. And it's very simply called Sliding Doors. And it's a play on the very popular, although I haven't seen it, film Sliding Doors. And it's very much about all the different paths and so forth you can take. But as, again, it's Stephen's idea, I'm going to let him take the lead and explain why particularly Sliding Doors for this episode. Then hopefully bring me in up to speed with it, as I have no idea what the film is like.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's a film that I watched a very long time ago, but it kind of made me think about, do we have the power to change our course, or is everything already preordained? And I like to think, personally, if I think about where I was born, what I was born into, and the life that I should have had versus the life I do have, I went down a different path. And, Sliding Doors is about, what happens if you make a different decision and you go down a different path. Can you change your life, and can you change the outcome? And what I'm going to say to you, based on my life experience, sat here as a black man in his 50s, I absolutely believe that you can change the course of your life if you choose a different door. And if you decide to do things differently, you have that power. I think sometimes we convince ourselves that everything is laid out for us and it doesn't matter what we do, we can't change it. Well, if that's the case, I should be either 6 feet under the ground, so I should be dead, or I should be incarcerated on a life sentence where I'm locked up. And I'm not any of those things. So that proves to me that actually we can change our course by sliding doors, by going through a different door, and by doing things differently. And and that's not just from a business perspective, that's from a personal perspective as well. And anyone listening to this, I want to give you hope that actually you may be in a difficult situation right now. You may be finding things very, very tough. You might be thinking, I don't know where, I'm going to go from here. I want you to know that you can make a difference and you can change your direction, and that direction can lead to whatever's good for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I do joke, but I don't really mean it as a joke. It's a perfect example of kind of what you said, but also the way we are, is the fact that you and I do a podcast together. I am what would be considered slightly privileged white guy, went to private school. Stephen is from the other side of the country. He's black. There's just no way this connection should ever have happened, should it? It's just not. It's not right, apparently. But we just are the same in our. We approach things in very different ways, but our core beliefs, and especially how we do coaching and so forth, very similar, isn't it? That's how we ended up doing this, because we were having conversations, and we were meeting up sort of virtually most of the time, weren't we? Having chats and thinking we should record this because people would love this. And we met on a golf course, standard for me. And I must admit, we did a podcast recently on judgment, and I was like, oh Christ, I've been put up with another coach. Well, that's brilliant, isn't it? A golf day with another coach. Well, he's going to love that, and I'm going to love it. And by the end of it, we'd already clicked. I had a rather shameful moment where I realised the hat I was wearing for my football club, you bloody designed. Mortifying. But ultimately, there is no way that we wouldn't now be friends in any way, shape or form, because we're not just professional colleagues, we're friends. We get on well. We probably don't spend as much time with one another as we could, but we're busy. But we love doing this. It's good fun. But there's no way back at the time you were talking about that we should ever have met.
Absolutely not.
It should not have happened, should it?
No.
So if there's any greater proof of that, and I balance it around more lightheartedly when I was talking off air before this, the kind of person I was 10 years ago, it's quite a challenging individual, very confident of myself, not particularly aware of my impact on the world, shall we say, and people, and not not great in many ways. I thought I was. That was part of the problem, but also very unaware. And I had a moment that many who've followed me will know, where I began to realise that the way I was going wasn't ideal. And now, 10 years down the line, a completely different person, able to have completely different conversations. Friends who've known me many, many years, just they think I'm bullshitting because they're like, what? That's not the Oliver that I know. But the ones who've known me longer over this period of time and seen me develop get it. You know, they do see it. So I think you've got two examples, one more extreme probably than the light touch one I'm giving you for me, but examples of you can. And I think that the final point, and I'll let you sort of segue off this and then explain it more in a moment, is about this feeling that we have about the outside world impacting us, and that the outside world is responsible for us and what happens to us. And I want to challenge that thinking, but I'd be interested just in your two pennies worth on that first before I go into depth. So what I've said and what you've already been thinking, the reason you brought this episode up.
I mean, you know, the reason why I really brought it up is because I think some people think that it's done and that they can't affect, or in many cases, people blame others for the situation that they're in. And this is about taking a different path. And sometimes that path might be a path less trodden. So that's maybe why it's a bit scary and a bit sort of, you know, people might be a bit anxious to do that. So for me, I really, you know, these podcasts, I always want someone to get something out of it. And what I'm trying to say is, you know, you can take control and you can make a difference of your life by going through a different door. You have that power, but you've got to be brave enough to go through the different door and not accept maybe where you are right now in your life. As an 8-year-old boy, people that know me will know the story, the reason why 8 is so prevalent to my life and why my brand has the number 8. And I made some decisions when I was 8 years old. I was put in a situation where I was woken up in the middle of the night. My mother and my sister, we packed one case and we ran away from the home that we were in because my mum was being mentally and physically abused, and she had the strength to say, I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm going to leave. We left and we went to a hostel, and they had room. So we went in and they said, we've got a room that you can all stay in. And in the middle of the night, as an 8-year-old, I woke up and I went to the toilet. And I'll never forget it. As I flushed the toilet and the water, which looked like it was going the wrong way round as it was flushing down, I made some promises to myself. And one of the promises I made was I wasn't going to let my circumstances impact who I was going to be. Secondly, I wasn't going to use this as an excuse to be a failure and use an excuse to say, I'm not doing very well because this happened to me. And I wasn't just going to be a statistic that the Home Office could use and say, yeah, you know, first generation immigrant from the Caribbean, they're no good. And when I tell you, Oliver, and people listening, that drove me. That drove me to want to be the best version of myself. That drove me as an 8-year-old to not just accept that this was my lot, that the door that was chosen, that was the one I was going to go through. Hell no. I decided I was going to choose my own door, and I wasn't going to be what everyone expected me to be. I wasn't going to be in a gang. I wasn't going to try and make a fast buck. I wasn't going to do all of these things that a boy from Manchester and Nottingham was supposed to be, that, you know, lived, you know, in the inner cities. I made that decision. And people often say, God, that was such a young age to make a decision at 8. But I made it at 8, and it's driven me to this day. And I would actually go as far to say, Oliver, that every day I wake up, I think about that moment. And that's what drives me on. And that's what I mean by these doors. You don't have to go through the door that everyone expects you to go through and be what everyone expects you to be. you can be different. But you have to want it, and you have to be prepared to, take that different path, whatever that path is. So when I'm talking about these sliding doors, I'm talking about it in that respect, that actually we can control it, but we have to want to do it. And someone once said to me, when I was younger, if someone keeps telling you that's what you are, then that's what you will be. Hell no. Okay. The more someone was telling me that's what you are and that's where you should stay in society, I was like, nah, I'm going to be different. And so any young person listening to this, or any parent or carer listening to this, instilling this into someone at a young age will help them to make decisions for themselves, because that's what it really boils down to. It starts very, very young, and then we stop making those decisions, and then everyone else around us makes those decisions for us, and they decide what door we're going to go through.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that you have the strength and the will to decide what door you go through. And when you're an adult, you have the strength. It's your decision. You can decide what door you go through, and you can change your life. So those people listening to this podcast right now, they're thinking, I can't do it. I can't change your life. You absolutely can. Go through that door that you really want to go through. Go for it right now. Go through that door and try it.
Yeah, no, 100% echo that. It's obviously just incredible to listen to Stephen's story, which I've heard before, but it gets no less striking and powerful each time. You also highlighted some of the things that we've talked in the past about negative language. You tell yourself you can't do something. Do you know what? You manifest it. It's true. If people keep telling you can't do something and you accept it, same thing. You'll begin to believe the crap that they're selling. And this is a really powerful thing that came to my mind that I mentioned slightly earlier in the episode. So I'm a big fan of Michael Neal. He's a very popular coach. He's written a book called The Inside Out Revolution, and he's sort of built on some work by a guy called Sydney Banks. That's all reference. You can find that stuff outside the podcast. I'm not going to spend airtime on that specifically. But one of the things that they ultimately, for me, prove, now other people will argue, but for me, they prove to me that thinking is incredibly powerful, and the thinking that we have does not have to impact us. And therefore, the way external events impact how we think, that happens. But the fact that we choose to take the first thoughts that come into our heads, that we can change. And I have seen evidence of people in the most traumatic experiences be able to find the positivity in it, be able to find comfort in it, become advocates of things. I've seen people with terminal illnesses be okay with it and actually still produce something amazing for the world. Now, I think there's levels of how far down this goes. I've got to be honest, if it happened to me, I think right now I'd still be quite pissed about it. But maybe I would feel different in those in those circumstances. But one of the most simplest ways to explain what I'm talking about here, and Michael Neal probably will do a better job of explaining this, but I'm going to take on his idea and attempt to convey it. You take 100 people. 100 people go in to see a movie, and let's say it's a movie they've never seen before, but let's call it Star Wars for one of popular reference most people will be aware of at least. Those 100 people go in and they go into the same cinema. So they are in slightly different seats, but ultimately they go into the same cinema, same environment. They're not allowed to talk to one another throughout the film, and they're not allowed to talk to one another after they've gone into the film. And after they've gone into the film, all 100 people are interviewed by different people to ask what they thought of the film. And you will have people who will love Darth Vader. You'll have people who hate Darth Vader. You'll have people who like Luke, who hated Luke. You'll have people who loved it, some who hated it, loved the music, didn't like the music, blah, 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 thought it was high quality, thought it was crap quality, whatever it might be. And therein, it might seem trite, is the proof in the pudding, because 100 people would have had the same experience, and their thinking, uninfluenced and unimpacted by other people, will have come out with loads of different results. Of course, there'll be some similarities, and close some people will see the same thing, but there'll also be people who felt differently about it. And that's all based from an external influence, and then it's based on how we think about it. And if you think about that from anything that you see happening, event happens, we have a view and we think about it and we run with that. Could we just sit there for a few minutes or longer and just watch the thoughts or listen to the thoughts that are going through our head and pick one we like? Yes, we can. It's a fact. I've done some neurolinguistic program training in the past as well. I've views on it, pros and cons, but the thing that I definitely do have, we managed to channel a happy place for me. And I'm sorry, Ipswich Town supporters, because you're going for a run one at the moment in the Premier League, but my happy place is Cameron Jerome scoring the third goal in our playoff semi-final, which meant that we went to Wembley, you didn't, and we got promoted. And all I have to do is a little exercise, and every time I do it, I'm doing it now, I'm seeing Cameron Jerome score that goal where I can finally relax, because I've been crapping myself for 2 legs of football here. Even when they had a player sent off, it was 2-1, I was in doubt. I didn't think it was going to happen. Then it did. Cameron Jerome scored. There was less than 4 minutes to go, I think. I believed. And that is a happy place. And no matter what's going on in my life, if I channel my thinking to that place, I can snap out of any funk I'm going on, which therefore proves that what's happened to me externally is influencing me, but I also have control of it. Because I had no control over Cameron Jerome scoring. I had no control over whether Ipswich are going to beat Norwich. It shouldn't matter that much to me. It really shouldn't, but it does. And I allow it to. But I don't allow the other stuff that's annoying me to do so. Because I like the way I feel about that memory. I don't like perhaps the other stuff that I'm trying to... Well, I am not trying. I am making myself forget by the exercise that I've taught myself. So the thing I would say, just on the sliding doors bit, and that different path you can pick, is you can absolutely condition it as well. You can train yourself to think helpfully. I think that's the word I always like to use, is think more helpfully. You can train yourself to do it. Happily, people like myself and Stephen can help you do that. But like, if you want to just delve into it for a little bit, pick up the book, Michael Neill, The Inside Out Revolution. It is not for everyone, because if you're not ready, you will not digest it in the way you should do, but there's nothing wrong with the contents of the book. It's your thinking if it doesn't resonate. That was a bit of a long one, but it always takes me back to one of the more powerful things I coach is that now, and I really stress I don't even doubt it. For me, it's a fact.
And it is incredible how much power we do have as humans, and if we can channel that power and that thinking, we can change our direction or outcome. And I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this podcast where it's going to really hit them hard, because it's quite a tough one to swallow. But what I want to say is, we're always here to reach out to us, or, to reach out to, like the Good Samaritans, anyone like that you want to sort of have a conversation with, because these sort of reflection moments can throw up so many different things and so many different feelings. And I talked about abuse there, physical and mental, and that might, it might just hit someone. We talked about being quite a young boy and that happening, so that might affect someone. So so do reach out if it has affected you. But what we want to leave you with really is, you have the power to choose a different path, and when you're on that path, as Oliver said, you have the power to be positive on that path, because you can tune into and write your own thinking. You can actually do that, and it is such a powerful thing to do. And I think sometimes the world that we live in today sometimes makes us feel like we're powerless. And what I want to say is, we have that power.
Yeah, great way to finish. I don't have nothing to add to that. So as always, as Stephen said, reach out to us if it's triggered you in any way, shape or form. We're here to help. A couple of previous episodes, I think it was episode, I want to say 10, it's called Suicidal Thoughts. There's a load of information in the descriptions there about some of the agencies and so forth. So if you don't want to reach out to us or anybody else, there's 4 or 5 different things, including the Samaritans and stuff, that are referenced there. So those links are available on the podcast now. So do take advantage of that. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there, because it's been very, very good. And we look forward to giving you the next episode next week.